Hey everyone, Greg Reinhardt from GRB Academy. I'm back today doing episode 6, understanding the recruiting calendar, and a little bit about communication between college coaches and players. Before we begin, please take just a second to subscribe. There's actually a little triangle down in the corner of the screen that should allow you to do it. We're getting really good at our technology with some downtime. We will keep bringing you great content and hopefully answer as many questions and help educate as much as possible. Understanding the recruiting calendar, I think it's important because there are so many events, so many showcases, tournaments, etc. And honestly, the NCAA has now limited this past year a lot of times of when coaches can and cannot be out. So you may be going to events where they're not even allowed to be out. Now, most good events, most tournaments, top prospect camps take into account of these periods, but some do not. So you need to understand that the exposure is going to look different. So let's begin. The NCAA lists 4 types of periods. 1, the quiet period. Second one is a dead period. The third one is an evaluation period. And the fourth one is a contact period. 3 of these really are important for college baseball. The evaluation period, that is more for basketball and football. So at the end of this past summer of 2019, there was a lot of drastic changes by NCAA baseball on the recruiting periods and what they look like. The main reasons that these were changed were really to protect the assistant coaches who were really on the road a lot and trying to give them a better home life, make sure that they're around if they have kids, especially, there's some head coaches around the country who really use their assistants a crazy amount in terms of how much they had to be out. It didn't matter if it was a holiday or anything, like their job was to be out all the time. And this kind of sets the playing field a little bit closer and gives coaches and guys an opportunity to have a life a little bit. So there's some crazy horror stories I've heard about how some assistant coaches were handled. This obviously stops most of it. So currently today in April of 2020, you are actually in a special dead period due to the coronavirus and COVID-19. That period expires April 15th. I expect it will be extended back along as our country is on a somewhat social distancing movement. So it'll probably be backed up. And I will talk about what that dead period is here in a minute. I'm going to start in order. So 1, a quiet period. What it really means, it allows for campus visits and on-campus camps. What it does not allow is coaches cannot be off campus for no recruiting events, no showcases, no games, or top prospect camps or camps. So quiet periods really are going to be times where you won't see any coaches out. You can't. But they can have you in on visits, they can have you in on camps, and they can show you their campus. In 2019 and 20, the recruiting calendar went into place on August 1st and started on August 1st of 2019. It will end this July 31st of 2020. I don't know that there will be any changes that are significant in the dates. But I think everything is up in the air really with our current situation. But I think if you took away the COVID-19, you probably see a very similar recruiting calendar for starting August 1st of this year. 2 quiet periods are listed on this year's calendar, right? So from August of 2019 through July 31st of 2020. The first quiet period was August 19th through September 12th. They list that the summer tournament season is over and schools are getting their players on campus. And it was a time to put in place really to settle down and get players in on your campus that were coming in as freshmen, and have the staff there so they could actually, if they do start practice or whatever they're doing, they could be there to get that moving and not be out on the road. The second quiet period this past year, October 14th through February 29th. This was a drastic change. In the past, it was very minor compared to this. This was a big deal. This actually had a lot of college coaches texting me about how bored they were, or wow, this is crazy. Like, once we're done with our fall season, like, we literally are shut down. Other than some camps and visits, they didn't have to go out to top prospect camps, showcases, no games. So you saw a big shift in how events were handled. I think for the major ones, you saw PBR and Perfect Game take their fall events and slide them up in front of October 14th. You even saw Jupiter, which is the main professional event, slid up in front of October 14th. And people ask, well, why does it matter if it's a professional event? It's a professional event, meaning there is a ton of scouts, scouting directors, GMs there. Every team is well represented with 20 to 30 or more of their scouting staff. But you also have college coaches down there. Not everyone is committed. There's a ton of junior college recruiting and late Division I recruiting that is happening at the Jupiter event, and babysitting, meaning Division I's are down there making sure other schools aren't trying to pull their recruits across late. So you saw that event move up. All the major fall events, the junior underclass from Perfect Game, the PBR fall event, and Indy were all in front of that October 14th date. You saw, like in GRB's case, we moved our top prospect camp to the weekend prior, or that weekend of October 14th, actually. So it was a big move this year. You saw more things move to on-campus camps, and a lot of schools use that for their visits now. Come in, do a camp, or a special camp, and then go get a tour of the campus, and a lot of offers were handed out during that period that way. So that's a quiet period, big things. You won't see people off campus, you can only be on campus. That's what you need to know. There's really only two big periods, but a really big one obviously is that mid-October through February, when people are wondering why recruiting's not happening or why are there no coaches out. That's why. The second one, period that's important for baseball, is the dead period. What does it mean? No one can be on campus, and no one can be off campus. So literally it is limited to calls, text, and emails. And why we talk about, or why we're on that subject, let's just talk a little bit about the calls, texting, and emailing, and some of the rules. So currently, if you are a 2020 grad, you can be called, texted, or emailed right from the coach to you. Same for 2021 this year. So anyone who's a junior, you can be called, texted, or emailed as of September 1st. So right now the rule reads September 1st of your junior year is when that can happen. If you are a 2022 or a 2023, the rules read the same. So sophomores and freshmen, the coach cannot call you. He cannot text you. You can call them. You can text them. Big thing. They cannot answer any text messages if you do text them. If you do call them, and they miss your phone call, if you leave a voicemail or send a text saying, hey, I just missed you, like, they can't answer at all. They can't call you back. It has to be initiated by the player directly to the coach. And how does that happen? Well, most of the time it happens through the summer coach or the travel organization getting a text message. Very common thing that's happened. Someone texts me at 7 o'clock at night. Hey, can you have so-and-so call me at 7:30 tonight? I then text the player, hey, can you call so-and-so at 7:30? If you miss, I automatically, if the phone call is not connected, I usually get a text within a minute from the coach saying, hey, I just missed so-and-so. Please have them redial. The process starts over. I text that player, hey, please call this guy. So it's kind of a roundabout process that makes it legal. And that's how it is. If you're a 22 or 23, however, and you get an email, just know that all emails cannot be communication or specific to you, really, legally. They can just talk to you about, hey, we want you to come to our camp. So if you're a 22 or 23 and you're like, I'm going to get ahead of this, I'm going to send out a bunch of emails, get people to know who I am. That's great. They'll read them. They're not going to answer you in a way that is personal, most likely. They'll probably email and say, hey, thank you for the email at this current time. Because of NCAA rules on recruiting, I'm going to be passing on our camp information. I would love to see you there. So that is the only communication you will see through email. Back to the dead period. There were 5 listed dead periods in this year's recruiting calendar. The biggest changes came around the holidays or certain college baseball periods. And it's caused a lot of changes around the summer tournament schedule for high school players, just based on these shutdowns and when people can or cannot be there. You'll see tournaments this summer, knock on wood, with this passing in our country. You'll see tournaments starting on Tuesdays, on Mondays, and shutting off on Fridays because that weekend's dead. They basically enveloped a couple holidays. So the dead periods this year, November 11th through the 14th of 2019. 2019 was dead, and the reason was that is the beginning of National Signing Week for letters of intent for Division I baseball. It actually is like 2 or 3 days before the period starts. I think it started on the 13th or 14th this year. But that basically stopped people from trying to recruit right at the last minute and allowed them to get their letters of intent done. January 2nd through the 5th, I think everyone's first response is, oh, it's New Year's, they give them a break. I think the biggest thing is that is traditionally the ABCA Coaches Convention is in Nashville this year, but it allows coaches and their full staffs to go to the convention and not worry about having to have a guy out recruiting. As crazy as that sounds, it was happening. That event is held almost the same weekend each year in a new city. I think this year's in Washington, D.C., but that will for sure be a dead period every year. May 25th through June 1st, this was a weird one. It's basically after the conference tournaments are finished and during the regionals. So this has stopped teams from getting out. They get bounced out of the conference tournament. They go out and try and scramble and recruit quick, while teams were being penalized by being in the regional. They were not allowed to be out, or coaches were making that decision, like, do we send the guy out while we're playing in the regional? Interesting enough, the College World Series is still a period where they can recruit. Those teams generally get a 2-week delay on their recruiting for the summer. So the next period, June 20th through 22nd of 2020 is dead this year. That is dead for Father's Day. Like I said, they're trying to create a home life for these coaches, and some of them have kids. A lot of them would be on the road on Father's Day. This gives them a 3-day at-home period with their family, which is nice. That's changed. That's really the biggest first week of recruiting around the country, and you're going to see a lot of events this year. I know in our program alone, starting on Tuesday of that week and being done on Friday, or maybe having the playoffs of that tournament start on a Saturday. No coaches really stay for playoffs. That's something you need to know anyways. They come to the games that are permanently scheduled with start times, and you can schedule your rotations. The last period, July 3rd through the 5th, is dead this year. Obviously, July 4th, another way to keep coaches home for the holiday. So that pretty much wraps up the dead periods and what you need to know with communication. The third period, the evaluation period. Like I said, this is for basically basketball and football and other sports. It does not pertain to baseball. You can ignore it. You won't even see it on the recruiting calendar. The fourth one is a contact period. These are the periods when you can see coaches are off campus. They are at camps, showcases, games, summer tournaments. They can have people on campus. All the communication can happen based on your graduation year. So this past year in the recruiting calendar, there's 3 periods, August 1st through I believe the 18th. That was a contact period. That was right before players got on campus. It was right at the end of the summer schedule. People could still be out. They could be on at home locations of programs. If they want to do that, they could watch tryouts. They could do a lot of stuff if people invited them to it. The second contact period was September 13th through October 13th this year. It's a month. That used to be drastically longer. You saw most of the major programs and most of the major events and top prospect camps fall in that window. So it was a condensed fall season. It was nice for coaches. It's better for players because their arms get shut down, in my opinion, and it was great for people who have programs like myself because we weren't out for 8, 9, 10 weeks in the fall. And the last contact period, March 1st through July 31st of the summer, with the exceptions of the 3 dead periods that I listed prior to this, May 25th through June 1st, June 20th through 22nd, July 3rd through 5th. Other than that, all of coaches are allowed to be out the whole time. The only thing about being on campus is if a player is at an event with his team, there's a gray area where if you played that day, you technically have to be dismissed for the day to get on campus. I know a lot of events are on big campuses, and usually you have to be done playing for the day or done with that weekend. Like sometimes when we're down in Tennessee, a Tennessee school grabs one of our players and wants to bring him on campus. It normally happens the next day or we have to be fully done. So that's a weird gray area rule that happens. So that is the recruiting period. This is when you will see people out and colleges out. The one thing to know is colleges are recruiting junior college players as well as high school players. For those JUCO players out there wondering, this calendar is identical for junior college recruiting or high school recruiting. So it was a big change for junior colleges as well because they're trying to stash their fall events inside that same period in the fall. And then, they're limited in the amount of time that people can come and see them as well. So the big thing for everyone to know, if you are making decisions on going to events, or you're going to plan on going to a winter showcase, or any of these items that land in dead periods or quiet periods, you won't see coaches. You will only see coaches if they are in the contact period. So that should help people a little bit with, going through some of the camps and showcases and just having some perspective. If you are making that decision to go into a camp, and they're advertising they're going to have coaches, they will not. But I think so many showcases in general and camps are going to video and live stream and some of that stuff. That's why you will still see events held during some of those periods that are not considered contact periods. So that is episode 6. That's a lot of information that I think is not known to the general public, but that's how this is operated. So if you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out, and I'll see you again shortly. Thanks.